Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how I created a matrix light board for the front of my house that's featured in my Halloween and Christmas holiday light shows. I'm going to be going behind the scenes, showing you everything about how I designed this thing, constructed it, installed it, and how to program for it. So if this is something you're considering adding to maybe your light show or something you're thinking about doing in the future, you're gonna wanna watch this video. A little bit of background if you are new here. My name's Jeff. I do weekly tech videos on this channel, tech reviews, tutorials. I love decorating for different holidays, and about 4 years ago I started getting really serious with my holiday decorations, specifically for Halloween and Christmas, and doing lots of research online and looking at other people's light shows that they do for their homes or for their commercial businesses, things like that. I started putting together a plan of what I wanted to do for my light show, started building things like my Megatree, which at that time was dead center in my yard, and that was like the whole show. From that point, I grew the show and started adding lights to my house, doing all the different borders of my home. Then I started adding props. So like for Halloween, I've got all these ghosts that I put on the home. For Christmas as well as Halloween, I use these circles. They're called spinners that you can add lights to, and just started adding more props. I built arches, 6-foot arches. They're either 4 or 6-foot arches. I can't remember exactly, that span across my yard. Built those pretty much from scratch, and I've done videos on all of this stuff that's part of my light show. So if you're just getting started with Christmas lighting, or if you're new to my channel, you might want to check out some of those videos first. I actually did a video of a complete behind the scenes tour walkthrough of how my entire show is laid out and run. Used to run it from a laptop computer, built myself a Raspberry Pi, and now the entire show is timed and scheduled through that Raspberry Pi that I can control remotely, which is pretty awesome. So go check out those videos. There'll be a playlist as well as links to those down in the video description. But now you're caught up. That brings me to this past year where I got started building my matrix. So first off, what is a light matrix? It's basically a collection of pixel lights that are punched into a grid of some sort of material, and that material keeps those lights nice and straight, and it essentially creates the illusion where you've got an entire wall of light. And since all of those different pixels can be programmed, you've got complete control of every single one of those bulbs. You can change the color, you can change the dimness, and that allows you to do greater effects than you can with just maybe a strip of light or a prop of light that's just bordered with those lights, because you basically have an entire surface of solid lights that you're working with. So you can do a matrix basically on any surface you want. Now, I've also seen other shows where they will actually create a very thin matrix in the front of their trees that are in their yard. You also could make a matrix out of some sort of material and then mount it in the ground so that it's a freestanding matrix. You're really not limited to just one spot, and that's what's so cool about adding matrices to your light show. And real quick, as I do in all the videos on this channel, I've hidden Tinker. Tinker's our little hidden robot. He looks just like this guy on my shirt, and he's gonna briefly pop up at some point during this video. If you happen to spot Tinker popping up, take note of the timestamp. That's the amount of time into this video when he pops up, and be the first person to let me know that timestamp down in the comments section below. If you're the first person to spot Tinker correctly, I will put your name on our Tinker Ford Hall of Fame page, as well as I will give you a shout out in one of my future videos. So I decided that the front picture window of my house was gonna be the place where I wanted to put my matrix. It's definitely a focal point when you're looking at our house, at the front of our house, and so I figured putting a matrix there would be the perfect fit. Now that opened up a whole bunch of different challenges for me, including the challenge that I hadn't done a matrix before. So I needed to size this thing, I needed to mount this thing, and I needed to make sure that it worked. So ultimately I started making a diagram. I took measurements of the window. If you're doing any type of a light show, I find it helpful as a tool to sketch everything out, whether you're doing it on a piece of paper, whether you're using some sort of software. I find using the website Canva, canva.com is great. Now I've got a little bit of a background of doing different graphic design and stuff like that, so I'm very familiar with it. So it was quite easy for me to just go in there and make quick sketches of measurements and what I needed for my matrix. I also have used this website for laying out the measurements and design for the other parts of my light show when I fasten lights to my house, and even just measuring out my arches, things like that. So what I did next is took those measurements. My measurements actually came out to 96 inches by about 63 inches. From that point, I needed to figure out how many lights I was going to need and what type of materials I was going to make the matrix out of. So if you've watched some of the other videos on my channel, a good majority of the items that are in my light show are from a company called HolidayCoro. And the pixel lights, the Coro that's on my house, the controllers, all of that stuff is from HolidayCoro. I've had a great experience working with them from customer service standpoint all the way to them shipping the products to me. Their stuff just works. It works great, so I continue to keep using it. So if you jump on HolidayCoro's website, they've got two different areas that you can go to. One is their kits that are already pre-assembled and laid out for you. Those are going to come with a controller. Those are going to come with your mesh that you're going to put the lights in, as well as the lights. But when you're buying the kit, they're putting it all together for you. So the lights are already available in that mesh, saving you some time. Or you can go the other route, which is kind of the route I always like to go, which is more bare bones and build it yourself. So after figuring out my measurements and figuring out how much mesh I was going to need, how many lights I was going to need, and what type of controller I was going to need to power all this stuff, I went ahead and ordered all that separately, and then I was in charge then of making sure I punched all the lights and laid them out accordingly in the matrix, and I'll kind of show you a little bit more about how I did that. Ultimately, I settled on getting a 48 by 32 pixel matrix, or I custom sized that to that size. Essentially what that means is there are 48 pixel lights that are going horizontally across the window by 32 lights down, and that together makes 1,536 pixels total. That's a lot of lights in my opinion. They're all spaced 2 inches apart. To me, what I really liked about this mesh from HolidayCoro is it breathes very nice. So on windy days, when we get high winds here in Wisconsin, stuff is blowing around all over the place. By having this matrix mesh, that lets a lot of the air through, and it doesn't create like a sail effect where it would, you know, pull a lot on that matrix. Having all the mesh and the holes in this thing just allows it to breathe a lot more, and I liked that. And you can space these pixel lights out anywhere, typically from about 1 inch spacing to 3 inch spacing. That's most typical for these light matrices. And now that starts to beg the question, you know, what size spacing are you going to go for? The 3 inch spacing is, you know, your lights are going to be a little bit further apart, and there's some pros and some cons to that. The pros are, with them being spaced a little bit further apart, you don't need to use as many lights in a certain area, and so that kind of cuts down the cost because you're not having to buy as many of those pixels. The downside is that the further apart your lights are spaced, the more low res the image is going to look. If you think of a television or a computer monitor, They're basically made up of little pixels. They're just so small that it all blends together and it looks like one giant image. That's essentially what this light matrix is, but on a much larger scale with larger bulbs. Now, I definitely wouldn't say that this matrix, when it's all put together, is anything high res, because it's definitely not. If you try putting even video clips or high res images on a light matrix, it doesn't look that great. It's not made for super high resolution types of things that you want to display, but for more ambient type effects, even more simplistic images, they're going to look great on a matrix. Now, the rest of the lights that border on my house, they're actually at 3-inch spacing. So that kind of gives this matrix spaced at 2 inches more of a pop. And I will say, when you are looking at the matrix on our house, it definitely has a visual draw to it, and that's exactly what I was going for. Now, our house is actually pulled back from the road probably around 75 feet or so. So something else to consider, if your house or wherever you're planning on putting this matrix is going to be much closer to wherever your audience is going to be viewing it, you might want to go with more of like a 1-inch spacing, because it's going to look more impressive. But for our house set at where it is, and from just viewing it from a distance, it looks great. So the nodes, or the light pixels that I used for my matrix, are not the typical bullet nodes that are used in all the rest of the props and stuff around my house. Those are the 2811 3-inch spacing pixel nodes. These are actually the lay flat squares, just a little bit different than the bullet nodes. They have a flat backing to them that allows them to just lay a little bit flatter on the back of that matrix. They seem to insert just a little bit easier as well. But those are the pixel lights that I used in the matrix itself. And then I went ahead and once everything was shipped over to me, started assembling this thing. And because this thing is so massive, I needed to figure out how I was going to be able to mount it. I'm interested to know, what are you currently working on right now for your maybe holiday lighting projects? Are you just starting to get into it, or are you just researching at this point? Or you're obviously watching this matrix video, so you're probably thinking about planning on building a matrix. What was your last project that you just worked on? It's always cool for me to hear what others are doing, so let me know down in the comments section below. So what did it cost to build this matrix? There's a couple of different pieces to this. One is you need some sort of a controller to run that board. And then on top of that, there's all the cost of the lights, there's the meshing, and then I had to build a frame out of it. So are you sitting down? Because it is definitely not cheap to put one of these things together. The total cost of all this stuff came out to about $1,000. Pretty close to that after everything was said and done. So it's not a cheap investment, but it should last for quite a while, and I am very impressed with its results. So let's talk about the construction of the matrix itself. Once I had the mesh and the lights that had arrived, what I did next is went to, you can go to any local hardware store, pick up some 1/2-inch PVC pipe. I went over to Lowe's. Not only did I buy 1/2-inch PVC pipe, but I bought a bunch of the curved elbows, as well as some of the T-joints and a cross joint. And essentially what I did is I made a border for all of this mesh, measured it out so that it would fit within those dimensions, secured it with the elbows, the T-joints, and then I even made another section of PVC that went through the middle, so a giant cross horizontally and vertically, and secured all that using some small screws just to hold the pieces together. I suppose I could have used some sort of joint compound, some sort of glue. I just went with screws because it was the quickest, easiest way that I decided to come up with. Again, I think there's multiple ways that you can do the same thing. Once I had the frame for the matrix built, then I went ahead and started fastening the meshing to the border. You can, the way that I fastened it and what I'd recommend to you is you can use zip ties, and I just used a ton of zip ties, knowing that once I started inserting the lights, that was really going to increase the weight of this entire matrix piece. So from that point, I had the frame built, I had the meshing attached, and the next step, which took several days to do, working about an hour a day, was inserting all of the different lights. And the way I have the matrix laid out, I'll show you here coming up in X lights, but essentially it was zigzagging the lights back and forth to make sure that everything was laid out exactly how I had this matrix laid out in X lights, so that the lights would do exactly how they're programmed in X lights. From that point, I was ready to start testing. I plugged all the different lights in before I actually mounted the matrix, just to test everything, make sure everything was working in my garage. Everything seemed to work just fine. So then I had the challenge of mounting this entire matrix on the front of my house, in front of that window. So these are the large screw eyes that I had used to screw into the side of our house. And what I was able to do is take a 1/2-inch piece of PVC pipe and insert that through each one of these screw eyes. From this point, I had these screw eyes mounted above and below my picture window, and that allowed me to take a 1/2-inch PVC piece of pipe and push that through those screw holes. I then used a bolt and a wing nut and some washers to just secure those PVC pipes in place so they weren't going to slide in and out of those screw holes. And then from that point, using help from my family, because this thing was too big and awkward to carry myself, so my kids were nice enough to help, my wife had helped as well, we carried this thing over and essentially held it in front of the window in place while I ran around zip tying the frame of this matrix to those PVC horizontal runs of pipe that were just in front of the window. At the end of the season, when we were done lighting everything up and we needed to take all this stuff back down, all I needed to do was run around with a pair of scissors and snip all of those zip ties. That freed up the matrix. Of course, I had to unplug all the lights as well. The strands could stay in the matrix mesh. I just needed to unplug the runs of power cables coming from the controller. But between unplugging it and just cutting all of those zip ties, that freed up the matrix. I was able to just pull that back off and we could carry that away for storage. So let's jump over to X lights. I want to show you how I set up and what I did to program the matrix. Then I'll show you some quick examples. Two different layouts that I do, typically one for Halloween, which you can see right here, and then a different layout for Christmas. The matrix itself stays the same for both seasons. What I am going to do is show you here in X lights to set up a matrix. You've got a toolbar that's right at the top, and there's a Create New Matrix button that you can just go ahead and click on. And then from this point, you can go anywhere on your X lights program, go ahead and drag out this matrix that you want. Again, it doesn't just have to be a horizontal rectangle. It can be just about anything you're looking for. With this matrix now highlighted, I can go over to the left column here where it has all the properties for it, and I can change these properties, the number of strings, nodes. What I'm going to do here is highlight the matrix that I set up, and you can see here that I have 8 strings, 192 nodes per run per string, and then there's 4 strands per string, or 4 strings per strand. What you can actually do here on your matrix, you can do this for any of your models, is I'm going to right click. That brings up this menu, and then I can go to wiring view, and I'm just going to pop this up. Let's make this full screen. You can now see, looking at this as if you were standing behind the matrix, so as if you were standing, you know, where my house is, looking back at this matrix. Let's see if I can make it just a little bigger for you. You can see how the strands are run. So up here on this very right part, this is how I have it set up, universe 1, and then from this point it zigzags down, and it actually does this 4 times it'll zig and then zag, zig and then zag again, and then it's going to stop right there. All of this I have on one universe. So that's one universe. I have 8 total universes, so 8 different collections here of 192 pixels, and each one of those runs, so it's 48 by 32, so each one of these horizontal runs has 48 pixels, and there are 32 runs total, thus 8 universes with the 4 different strands that are interconnected for each one. That is how my matrix is laid out. Then when I plugged all these into my receiver, the box that's mounted on the side of my house, that box is dedicated just for this matrix. Each one of these strands with the strings of lights has its own port going into that long-range receiver. So essentially you can control up to about 200 of those pixels per port. So I was able to lay all that out, and then from that point I can go ahead and start sequencing. So we're in the layout tab here in X-Lights looking at how I have everything laid out. I'm actually just going to get rid of that matrix because that was just showing you an example. But I've got the layout of all my different props, my arches, my ghosts, and then the matrix, all the different borders around my house. I can then start my sequencing, and let's jump over to sequence here. I actually pulled up, this is a great song that I sequenced here, Somebody's Watching Me. This one has gotten the most hits on my YouTube channel. Not my Tinker Forward channel, but I've got a dedicated channel for just my holiday lights. You can go to Tinker Forward Holiday Lighting on YouTube and see all the actual sequences. Those will be linked. There's a link to that channel down in this video description. But you'll notice all the different layers here for my light show, and then there's a layer here for matrix. And for this particular sequence, I added video clips. And so on your matrix layer, you can add either pictures or video, and you can go up to this top toolbar here where you've got all these different options. Here's video. You can just grab this and go ahead and drag it down to this matrix layer and then link to what video you want. I'm going to go ahead and play this sequence. I'm actually somewhere in the middle here, but in the middle of the song, what is so eye-catching about this is the matrix eyeballs, all the different instances. All these are you can use video clips. I actually used animated GIFs or GIFs, whatever you want to call them, and just threw them into the timeline at the appropriate parts in the song when it's talking about somebody watching me, and that worked out really well. And that is definitely the eye catcher of the song, all the way to the end where, let's see if I can just click on this. We've got, let's go right here. See if I can stop this and reposition to here. Got the scary jack-o'-lantern at the end with all just the white lights glistening, and then these are my gravestones here going crazy. Really cool stuff that you can do with the matrix effects, and this is just one quick example. You can insert video clips, you can insert pictures, and then animate those pictures. Up on this toolbar again, right here is a pictures icon, and again you can go into that and then go ahead and select any pictures that you have on your computer. Clip art is going to work best, or ambient pictures. If you're trying to put like a picture that you've taken on your camera on a matrix, because of the pixelation of it with those pixel bulbs, it's not going to look good. You can try it, but what works best for different effects on this matrix are simpler, either animated video clips, images like GIFs, or solid pictures of some sort of clip art that you can then animate. So even if I were to insert a picture, like for Thanksgiving, I had a turkey, very silly, running across our matrix. Those are all things you can do using either the video options or the picture options in X-Lights. Jumping over to Christmas, Just showing you some examples here of some of the effects you can do with the matrix that don't involve videos, that don't involve pictures. It's just sequence effects that I have dragged into that matrix layer, and those are a lot of the same effects that are happening on the rest of my house, but because you have so many pixels that are together for your matrix, it takes those effects and really makes them eye-popping because you've got such a large area to work with. So for this video, I'm not going to go too much more in depth about animating in X-Lights. I have done, I think, at least one other video talking about some of the basics of animating things in X-Lights. I may do more videos like that in the future. This video is just more dedicated on how I created the matrix. And you can check out all those other videos that I've done about holiday decorating and stuff down in the playlist that I've done for Halloween and Christmas. I'll also try to link to that down in the video description. So I've been able to do so much cool stuff using the matrix in my light show. It's really added some eye-popping features and allowed me to do some really cool things that I couldn't do before, just having lights border my house or just be in borders around the different props that I have. Again, it's another element in my light show. And as I keep continuing to do more designing, adding on to my light show, adding different elements like the props that I have, the lights bordering my house, now the matrix, it just continues to add to the fun with sequencing and just giving people driving by something really cool to see. And obviously these are really fun light shows to watch online as well. So what do you guys think of the matrix on my house? Was it big enough? Do you think I should have made it bigger? Are there other areas of my light show where you think I should add more light matrices? Let me know down in the comments section below. I do appreciate you guys watching. I do weekly videos on this channel, not just about holiday lights and decorating, but tech reviews, do-it-yourself projects, and more. So if you hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, you'll never miss any of my weekly videos. And if you got some value out of this video, if you enjoyed it, I encourage you to take a second, smash that like button, as I greatly appreciate it. It helps out this channel. If you haven't checked out that behind the scenes tour video that I did on my light show, you should go check that out next. That's going to be popping up here at the end of this video or linked down in the video description below. My name is Jeff, and I do appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to make every day awesome, and I will see you in the next video.